Have you ever found yourself sitting in a quiet room, looking out the window, and wondering how everything around you has changed? But more importantly, how you have changed. It's not just about the silver strands in your hair or the way your knees creak a little more than they used to. It's something deeper, something in your heart. The things you used to tolerate now feel unbearable. The relationships you once held on to tightly now feel heavy. And sometimes, just sometimes, you ask yourself, when do I get to matter? If that sounds familiar, then this conversation is for you. Today, I want to talk with you, not at you, about something that doesn't always come easy: facing hard truths. Not the sugar-coated phrases people throw around like, "You're only as old as you feel," or "Age is just a number." No. These are the raw, honest truths that can actually free you. Free you from guilt, from regret, from feeling like you constantly have to apologize for simply existing with your own needs and your own desires. These truths might sting at first, but they hold the power to change how you live the rest of your life. Not just survive it, but live it. Fully. Peacefully. With dignity. Let's talk about the first one. It's this. Not everyone who enters your life, especially in your older years, has good intentions. I know that sounds cynical, but it's not meant to make you bitter. It's meant to make you wise. Because as we age, our desire for companionship grows stronger. The silence in a room that used to be filled with laughter starts to echo. We miss conversation. We miss touch. We miss feeling seen. And because of that, we can become more open, sometimes too open, to people who may not truly deserve a seat at our table. You've probably seen it before. Someone who only shows up when you're down. They come with kind words, maybe even a small gesture of help. And at first, it feels like support. It feels like friendship. But then time passes, and you notice something. When things are going well, they disappear. When you need real help, they're suddenly unavailable. But when you're vulnerable, there they are, ready to step in, not to lift you, but to lean on you. It could be a neighbor, a distant relative, sometimes even your own child. Yes, I said it. Because the hardest truth to swallow is that even the people we love most can become the ones who take the most without giving back. Maybe it starts with small things. They ask for a little help, then a little more. Then it becomes expected. And when you finally say, "I'm tired" or "I can't," you're met with silence, or worse, guilt. This is where boundaries come in. Not walls, not coldness, but boundaries. There's a difference. A boundary is not a punishment. It's a declaration. It says, "I know my worth. I know my energy is not infinite, and I choose to protect what's left of it." This leads us straight into the second truth. You must stop living to please everyone else, especially your family. I know that's a hard one. We've been told all our lives that good mothers, good fathers, good grandparents give, and give, and give. But here's what no one tells you. There comes a point when giving turns into disappearing. How many dreams have you put aside? How many times have you said, "Maybe next year," or "It's too late now"? All because someone else needed something from you. Maybe you didn't travel because someone needed help watching the grandkids. Maybe you didn't take that class or join that walking group because your adult children needed you to be available. But ask yourself honestly, what happens when you need something? Who's there then? This is not bitterness talking. This is clarity. Love is not measured by how much of yourself you erase for others. Real love is mutual. It considers your joy, your rest, your healing, not just your labor. And if you are constantly giving and never receiving, that is not love. That is imbalance. Now let me be clear, this is not about abandoning your family. It's not about cutting people off in anger. It's about realizing that your needs matter too. You are not just a support system. You are a person with a heart, with aches, with desires. And after 60, your life is not over. It's entering a new season, one where you finally get to ask, "What do I want?" and not feel guilty about the answer. Imagine this, waking up one morning and planning your day around what brings you joy. Not errands for someone else, not obligations that leave you drained, but a quiet walk, a phone call with someone who lifts you up, a hobby that makes your eyes light up again. That's not selfishness. That's self-respect. And that brings me to the third truth. It's one of the hardest of all to accept, but it's also the one that sets the deepest kind of peace in motion. Sometimes the people who hurt us most are the ones we are told never to walk away from. Yes, I'm talking about family again. Because we're taught from a young age that family is everything. That no matter what they do, we should forgive. That we should endure. That blood is thicker than water. But what happens when that blood is slowly draining the life out of you? What happens when every call leaves you feeling smaller? Every visit fills you with tension? Every favor leaves you depleted? Let me say this as gently and clearly as I can. Being related to someone does not give them a license to hurt you. Not when you were young. Not now. Not ever. If someone, be it a child, a sibling, even a spouse, is constantly disrespecting you, manipulating you, or using your love against you, it's okay to step back. Not out of anger, but out of love. For yourself. Because every time you allow toxic behavior, even quietly, even for the sake of peace, you send a message to them and to yourself that your well-being is negotiable. And it's not. You don't have to cut people off entirely to create space. You don't have to shout or argue or explain. You can simply draw a line. And you get to decide what that line looks like. Maybe it's fewer phone calls. Maybe it's saying no more often. Maybe it's choosing how you want to spend the holidays, for your peace, not anyone else's expectations. You are not just a supporting character in other people's lives. This is your story too. And just because you've lived many chapters already doesn't mean the final ones can't be the most liberating, the most peaceful, the most you. Let's take a deep breath together. Because now that you've heard the first few truths, you may already feel something stirring inside, maybe discomfort, maybe recognition, or maybe, just maybe, a quiet sense of relief. Relief that someone finally said what you've been thinking for years, but were too afraid to say out loud. That you matter, and you no longer need permission to live for yourself. Let's continue. There's another truth that many carry silently, often tucked behind a lifetime of sacrifice. You may never get the recognition you hoped for, and that's okay. It's one of the hardest truths to accept, especially if you've spent decades pouring yourself into your family, your marriage, your community. You cooked the meals, stayed up late, made the appointments, gave without keeping score. And a part of you believed, hoped, that one day someone would look at you and say, "Thank you. I see all that you did. You were my rock." But maybe that moment never came. Maybe your children grew up and didn't say much. Maybe your partner took you for granted. Maybe your quiet sacrifices became so expected, they disappeared altogether. And it hurts. Of course it does. Because deep down, we all want to feel seen. We all want to know that our love, our time, our energy, it meant something. But here's where the shift begins. What if, instead of waiting for the world to validate your worth, you started validating it yourself? You don't need their words to make what you did real. The nights you stayed awake worrying, the hours you spent listening, the meals, the hugs, the support, that all happened. It was real. It mattered, whether they saw it or not. And when you accept that, something remarkable happens. You stop chasing. You stop begging the past to give you something it never did. And you start reclaiming your peace. You start saying to yourself, "I was good. I was loving. I showed up. And that is enough." This kind of self-recognition is not arrogance. It's healing. It's the warm hand you place on your own heart, reminding yourself that you don't need applause to know your value. You already know. That brings us to a truth that can be both terrifying and empowering. And it's this: your age is not an excuse to stop growing. Now I get it. There's a part of us that wants to slow down. And we deserve rest. But rest is not the same as resignation. Just because you're in your 60s, 70s, or even 80s doesn't mean you've stopped being capable of change. In fact, this may be the perfect time for it. But too often we tell ourselves, I'm too old to start over. It's too late to try that. That ship has sailed. And with every repetition of those words, we shrink our world. We build walls where doors could be. We limit the life that's still available to us. But what if you flipped the script? What if you saw your age not as a limit, but as leverage? You have something now that you never had when you were younger: perspective. You know what matters. You've seen what works and what doesn't. And that wisdom? That's power. You can still pick up a paintbrush. You can still start journaling, learning Spanish, volunteering at a shelter, planting a garden. You can still say no to the roles others forced on you and say yes to who you really are. You can forgive yourself for the things you didn't do and start doing the things you still can. It's not too late. It's never too late to be more you. And this is where we lean into another truth, one that so many resist because it requires us to look backward. You must let go of the past as your only refuge. Nostalgia is a powerful thing. It wraps us in comfort. We think back to the days when our bodies were stronger, when our homes were louder, when our calendars were full and our roles were clear. There's beauty in those memories. There's love there. But when we live in the past, instead of simply remembering it, we start to lose our connection to the life unfolding right now. Maybe you've caught yourself saying, things were better back then. Or, if only I could go back. And while that longing is understandable, it can become a trap, a beautiful one, but a trap nonetheless. Because when we fixate on what was, we miss what is. We overlook the simple joys of now, the peace of a quiet morning, the laughter of a neighbor, the comfort of a favorite chair, a good book, a warm meal made just for you. Letting go of the past doesn't mean forgetting it. It means honoring it, and then choosing to fully live in the present. Because life, even now, still wants to surprise you. It still has things to offer if you're willing to open your hands to receive them. So ask yourself, what might still be possible for you if you stop telling yourself that your best years are behind you? What if the best moments haven't even happened yet? Not in the flashy, exciting way, but in the deep, meaningful sense of finally being who you are without shame, without rush, without apology. You don't have to become someone new. You just have to uncover the person you've always been, buried under years of responsibility, expectation, and duty. And that person, you, deserves joy, deserves rest, deserves freedom. So here we are, walking together through these truths, one by one, not to burden you, but to liberate you. And the next one, well, it touches something delicate. It's personal. It's private. And maybe no one's ever said it to you with kindness before. But I will. You must be honest with yourself about the habits that may be quietly draining your energy and spirit. Even the ones done in private. Even the ones no one else sees. Let's talk plainly for a moment about something many avoid, especially in later life. That habit, perhaps daily, of using physical pleasure, like masturbation, not for connection or joy, but as an emotional escape. A routine. A reflex. Now let's be clear. There is nothing shameful about knowing your body or honoring it with care. In fact, healthy sexuality and intimacy with yourself or someone else can be beautiful at any age. But when a habit becomes a substitute for real connection, when it replaces meaningful activity, When it begins to isolate you from the world around you rather than bring you closer to it, that's when it becomes a weight, not a comfort. You might not even realize it's happening. Maybe it started out of boredom, out of loneliness, out of stress, and little by little it became part of your routine, something to fill the silence or pass the time. But here's the truth. Sometimes, what feels like a moment of relief can, over time, dull our energy, our clarity, our sense of purpose. So this isn't about judgment. It's about asking yourself, is this habit lifting me, or is it slowly flattening me out? Because what we do with our time matters. And when we begin to treat pleasure as our only form of comfort, we risk forgetting how good it feels to experience joy in other ways too. Have you ever noticed how a morning walk can change your entire day? Or how engaging with a creative hobby can make hours pass without you even realizing? Or how meaningful a real conversation can feel, even if it's short, even if it's with a stranger at the grocery store? We don't need to eliminate joy from our lives. We just need to diversify it, redirect it, reclaim it. True satisfaction comes not from the quick escape, but from the richness of living fully, however quietly, however slowly. And so here we arrive, not at a finish line, but at the most important truth of all. And it's simple. It's tender. It's brave. You are allowed, right now, to choose peace. Not someday. Not when others finally understand. Not when the stars align or everything is perfect. Now. Choosing peace doesn't mean your life has to be problem-free. It doesn't mean you forget the hurt or never feel lonely again. Choosing peace means you stop fighting yourself. You stop negotiating your worth. You stop putting your well-being last in line behind everyone else's needs. You stop looking for permission to be content. You start saying yes to rest. Yes to slower mornings. Yes to walking away from drama. Yes to creating something or to doing nothing at all without guilt. Yes to silence. Yes to laughter. Yes to boundaries. Yes to dignity. Yes to a kind of freedom that says, I've done enough. I've earned this. Because you have. There is a version of your life waiting to unfold, one where you are not apologizing for taking up space, for saying no, for doing what feels right for your soul. A version where you are not defined by what others think of you or what they forgot to thank you for. A version where you are no longer a background character in someone else's drama, but the peaceful, powerful author of your own next chapter. So what do you do now? You pause. You breathe. You remember that change isn't about doing something grand. Sometimes it's about quietly reclaiming your mornings, turning off your phone, saying no without explanation, saying yes to joy even if it's small. You give yourself the gift you've given to others for so many years, grace. You remind yourself that you're not too old, not too late, not too broken, not too far gone. You are still becoming, still unfolding, still capable of surprising yourself. And isn't that beautiful? If something in today's message spoke to you, I hope you'll share it in the comments. Not just for me, but for someone else reading who might be walking through the same emotions and needs to know they're not alone. If you found peace in this message, consider liking this video, sharing it with someone you care about, and subscribing to the channel for more honest, heartfelt conversations like this one. This life is still yours to live. You have given much. Now it's time to receive. You have loved deeply. Now it's time to love yourself. You have survived so much. Now it's time to thrive. So here's to you, to your peace, your dignity, and your beautiful freedom. May it come quietly, completely, and last for the rest of your days. Thank you for being here with me.